Good afternoon and welcome to the final Leadership Digital Transformation Programme session. This is session 7 of a series of webinars. If you've missed any of the previous sessions, you had commitments in school or you weren't able to make it, please remember to visit the events page on the Turn It On website. And at the very bottom of there's a link to our YouTube channel and you'll be able to visit any of the previous 6 sessions that we've covered. Just to reference for today, if are going to participate in the session, make sure that you unmute your mic or you can place some questions in the chat. I've already put a few prompts in there for you. What we're really interested in today is to see just how the process has gone for you, what your vision is and where you've targeted your priorities for improvement in school, basing that around the educational transformation framework we've been looking at across these sessions, and also maybe some of the apps in M365 that you think are really going to have impact in your school and make a difference on your digital transformation journey. So without any further delay, we'll get started. We are going today focus on that implementation phase, and we are going to look at, for you, what you've identified as priorities, if you've had any feedback from staff and when you've evaluated that, where you think you would focus your attention first, and then the longer term program of where you're going to be in 3 to 5 years. We'll also have a quick look at Immersive Reader, which a lot of people have mentioned, but also we're trying to highlight areas of the Office 365 offering where you are able to go in, tap into those and maybe build them into your vision planning as well. As we said at the beginning of this makes up session 7, and there was 7 in total, so this will be the last one in the series. We may be running this program again next year, but we will have to advertise and market those at a later date. So the Educational Transformation Framework is the construct or the framework we are using in order to couch what we're going to improve and think just how on earth can we prepare the pupils and the students we have with us to be those future citizens that are going to be successful in the world they find themselves. And at the moment where they currently are in education means that there are some key influences and some inputs in their life. It might be that the government has decided something and the DfE have got involved, and through that there are certain things that they have to do, whether it's recent changes through COVID and when examinations are going to take place, or maybe there's some lenience about that. And then local authorities, whether you are an academy or you're still state maintained, there will be contact with the local authorities. They will have a mandate from government as well, and they'll be getting involved, although I fully appreciate you'll have more autonomy if you are already academised. The trust itself might have its own vision and its own direction of travel. It may have its own improvement plan, which sometimes can be set for it by outside influences such as Ofsted, or it might be through self-diagnostic and reflection internally and making sure that that's an ongoing journey. And very important not to underestimate the people within our organisations. Every single person that's employed has a valid part to play, and we should listen to what they say and also how any change is impacting upon their role. And we should never ever underestimate the frank feedback that you will get from pupils and students, and it's so important to make sure that you get them on board in this journey as well. With preparing the class of 2030, which is what we're looking forward to, it's an uncertain time, not only just as where we are now, but also where we could find, or they could find themselves in the future. And we need to think, well, what are we going to do around social emotional learning and those competencies, and also making it student or pupil centric to ensure that we do them the justice they deserve in the time they have with us. It's thinking about, well, what is it going to look like when they get into the wider world, and thinking about what employers are looking for. That very clearly employers are already seeing trends. And for instance, you can see there that only 40% of employers believe that the graduates coming out of university or colleges are really prepared to survive and flourish in the workplace today. So thinking about us as educationalists, what do we need to do to change the way that we're approaching delivering that education? Now, we've got a clear remit from the national curriculum and also other pressures from the outside of what we must deliver, but is there anything we can do in the way that we deliver that will set them up for better being successful in the future? It could be things like how to personalize learning as far as possible. It could be that the teachers themselves are thinking, well, you've got a very good, strong relationship with the students, and you might have the perception you've got a strong relationship with the students, but do the students truly believe that? Have they engaged at that very deep level where they've got that connection with the teacher? The teacher's got their attention and got their focus on the minute they get into the classroom. And digital transformation could be one of those ways that doing that. And it can well be that it reaches some of those more difficult to touch pupils and gets them involved in the learning that's taking place. Also, you may be able to connect them socially and emotionally and provide that stability, which then gives them that settled mindset to be ready to engage in learning. There's been some quotes that we've used during the course, but one here from the OECD really emphasizing that change to the methods and customizing the process of delivering the education that pupils and students get could never be underestimated. And it's one of those core pillars in the educational transformation framework, and it's not something we should overlook. So talking about the educational transformation framework, we've got the leadership and policy, we've got the teaching and learning, also the intelligent environments, and of course not overlooking the student and school success. We've spent time in the previous sessions looking through those, but really it's now saying, well, have we got everyone on board, or what do we need to do in each of those 4 areas to make sure that we're truly touching everyone in our school, in our trust, in our academies, and making sure that they understand the vision for that, but also more importantly why we're approaching that change and how they can play their part and how you're going to make sure they're supported in that journey as well. So the questions that we've had from some of the feedback throughout the sessions from people that have come and gone and not necessarily been here for every single one is, well, why should I be using the framework? It's something I wanted to touch upon and just bring back to the surface as we come towards the end of the course. It does have a holistic approach. It looks at all areas of the school. Now, you're doing that anyway as leaders of the school, but it supports you in that process and it gives you that diagnostic. The self-assessment that we ask you to complete will draw out some of those high-level areas, but then it allows you to drill down, particularly of areas that are highlighted for you as development priorities, and think about, well, how do we resource that? How do we plan? How do we make sure that everyone's with us and aligned with the same vision? And that roadmap is clear, but also that we revisit our vision quite frequently and check that it's still fit for purpose. We've got also the assurance that the educational transformation framework is based in global practice. There's been a lot of research done with Microsoft and all sorts of educational establishments around the world in all different educational phases. You can see here some examples of some of the countries and the focuses there's been. So for instance, if we looked at New Zealand, focusing in on curriculum assessment and also looking at teacher leadership capacity, the fact that the ETF in that country has hit 780k of students and 24k of teachers, it's massive. So we're not talking about small numbers. This is a tried and tested approach that translates globally, although we will of course have to translate it and adapt it to suit our local education system, which is part of the reason why I Turn It On with Microsoft to put on this course, to ensure that we support you in doing that and you get the resources that are required. So coming back to each of those 4 pillars, we're just going to have a very quick look through to understand how you might have engaged with them so far and also what you might do with them in the future. And it's one of those sessions where we're going to just look back, think about the planning documents I've given you. As I said last time, I'm not expecting anyone to have found huge amounts of time during the program to have sat down and written down a lot of information or planned in minute detail. We've got a lot of other challenges going on at the moment. But what I'd be really interested in to understand, if you've identified a pillar, which one is it and why is it important to you? So whether it's the leadership and policy, and in leadership and policy, We focused in on the vision for change, the need for that strategic planning and thinking about the change management to ensure that nobody's left behind or alienated, but also that we never just settle for where we are now, that we're always striving for better, not to lose what we've got, but also thinking about how it could be improved further still, but also ensuring that you keep a strong community in school, that's staff and students, but also maybe the wider community around the school. That can be done through very simple things that we looked at the beginning of this, maybe using teams to ensure that even though communities can't get face-to-face now, because we've got classroom bubbles, year group bubbles, phase bubbles, that people can still connect over other platforms. And things like Teams can offer that, and there's lots of other tools in Office 365 that could facilitate that. One of the other areas we looked at was the teaching and learning, and making sure that curriculum and assessment and also the devices to give access to the curriculum are all there. So that really thinking about students are, and we know it all the time, but students absolutely at the center of everything we do. And when we're doing digital transformation planning, that we still maintain that. And we think, well, what are the quality of devices we're asking them to use? Are we setting up teachers to fail by giving them very old desktop computers or laptops that aren't fit for purpose? And that's not going to make for an engaging lesson. We spoke earlier about making sure that pupils are engaged, and that whole disparity between the teachers think pupils are engaged and they're on board with them, but actually only 34% said they were. It can be around delivering non-relevant curriculum, forcing them to use applications they don't find are engaging or they don't find are easy to use, but also the devices too. Then it's the physical space, the learning classrooms. We would all have a magic wand to transform some of the areas of our schools, and we know that budgets don't permit that, but you could maybe produce an awe-inspiring space and then let people have access to that on a rota basis. Yes, we would love to have more time and more money to provide that wider across the school, but it might be that you have to start somewhere, and it could be that dedicated learning space, or you maybe just get past the rigidness of traditional teaching methods and you accept that sometimes if you've got devices, you might just push all the tables back and get on with it. The next thing we looked at was intelligent environments. The fact we want secure environments that safeguard our pupils and students, but also get them access to the resources they need. So we have focused during this whole series a lot on hybrid learning and how to enable hybrid learning. Teams was one of those tools for that again, but we also looked at getting data out. So we looked at things like Microsoft Power BI, getting information into dashboards. We're very data rich, but sometimes, particularly in platforms where we are just using things like email very often, we don't always think about the data it holds and how we might get it out. And then you're going to have to go back and just question, well, is it optimal for students to do what they need to do? Or do we need to make further changes? And is, at the moment, everything configured to be as safe as possible? Maybe we need to replace some firewalls. Maybe actually moving to the cloud will make it more secure than the server we've got on site. So there's lots of different ways that we could do this. And there's also lots of different ways that people will come up with ideas about how to achieve that. And one of the key things that we've emphasized all the way through the Leadership Digital Transformation Program is keep talking to the people in your community, understand what they need, understand what's going to be useful for them, understand how it's going to have impact. Just because someone thinks they would like it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to drive up standards. So it's important to keep both of those in your vision. So in the student and school success pillar, which is the last pillar we're going to look at, it focuses back on that teaching and learning aspect. It makes you reflect about capacity you might have in school and the wider teaching staff, or do you need to bolster certain elements of the leadership team to support digital transformation? And are there future ready skills there, not just for students, but also for staff? Do you need to get staff studying qualifications like becoming a certified MIE and completing some of the courses in the Microsoft Education Center to better understand what they got available in Office 365? Could you link up with another school? If you got a Microsoft Showcase school near you where you could go and visit, or you could have a Teams meeting and they could remote in with your leadership team? Sharing good practice, I always find, is the most powerful thing. And just being able to talk to another school that have faced similar situations and just share how they've overcome them or how they've been successful in implementing some of these changes. So the questions that we're asking you is really to think about, where are you now, and also what is next? And when you come to the what is next, don't try to do too much too quickly. we all want to get to have the highest impact possible, but sometimes it's better to spend longer on the planning process and then be more successful once you get to the other end, because you knew exactly where you were going and all of the barriers and the hurdles that might hit you, but also all of the assets you've got behind you that were going to mean that this transformation is going to be successful. So as far as the tasks that we're going to set you on the road towards after session 7 today, is we're going to get you to think about the building of capacity for change. And that's very much thinking about the people that you have inside of your environment. Also considering the plan that you have in place. We have barely scratched the surface that we've got planning frameworks that will help us here, but they will not go far enough. And that's why we ask you to complete the self-assessment tool, because it will give you access to even more resources. Then that evaluation and feedback, constant evaluation and feedback. We do it educationally. We need to do it in the vision planning process, and revisiting it and that reevaluating and then that tweaking the trajectory of travel moving forwards. So at the moment, after going through the process, we got anybody here at the moment who wants to share where they think they are, or if they've identified any priorities of what they need to do in the future? Again, you can type it into the chat box, or you can feel free to unmute. No? Okay. We'll move on through. So when you get to the Microsoft Education Centre, which again is great for upskilling staff, but it's also really core for when you're using the educational transformation framework, you've got various courses in there. If you search for the titles Leadership and Policy, Teaching and Learning, Intelligent Environments, and the Student and School Success, linked to educational framework, you'll get the individual courses, but you'll also get the learning pathways. And that's something that most school leaders find extremely useful, to provide that rounded background knowledge after programs such as this, where you've been introduced to the ETF, you've been given some initial planning documents to start to complete that, but that journey is much longer, and also the support is much greater in the resources that are available in there. And also that many schools that come to these sessions end up with commissioning one-to-one projects where there's longer ongoing relationships over a number of years between companies such as Turn It On, to help support that digital transformation with regular meetings with staff in school, completing those surveys or supporting and evaluating where we are now, whether that's physical on-site surveys of things like hardware, or understanding what's being used to support teaching and learning, or maybe in admin offices. There's that holistic approach that we spoke about. It can take a lot of time. So that's how having the MEC available will help in that, but also having maybe someone else coming in to work with you or connecting with other like-minded schools is also really, really powerful. So to finish off, one of the things that we've had questions over, and also we've had some requests for, is to look at transferable unilateral tools that are really powerful across vision change. An inclusive classroom is a theme that comes up quite regularly. So we're going to finish off by having a look at a tool that will promote an inclusive classroom. Whether that's getting over learning needs such as dyslexia and making sure that everyone has equal access to learning, Immersive Reader is something that can achieve that. It's got the ability to do all of the things that are listed down the side there, and we will break out in a minute and we'll have a look at those in real time. But the Immersive Reader is something that's really embedded across everywhere in Office 365. So you can see their core products. It's something you can switch on, and if prior to that, one of the barriers to being successful in learning might have been the literacy level that a pupil or a student was working at, and they couldn't read something, and actually it shouldn't matter what their literacy level is, because they're doing an entirely different subject to English. Maybe they can't understand a question in maths. Why should that put them on a back foot and prevent them from being successful and prevent them being inclusive in that classroom. So there's all the different applications there: Word, OneNote Class Notebook that we've looked at, Microsoft Forms, things like web browsers from Microsoft as well. The Edge web browser, it's got it on the top by the address bar. You can go in there. It can also be used for email if you've got students using email in secondary. It's throughout Teams, and we'll have a look at it today in Teams, but also pops up in some more quirky elements of Microsoft 365, such as Minecraft Education Edition. So if you went to Booking Quill and you were recording some information like we looked at last time, Booking Quill has Immersive Reader built in. So it makes sure that that access to learning is a great leveler, and the tools there do not cost anything extra. As long as you've got Office 365, there's no hidden additional costs, so you've got them there. But it goes one step beyond that, because Microsoft has learned not to be too precious about this. And what they've done is they've thrown open the door to other learning tools, so other platforms having the same learning tool. So Immersive Reader is available at the moment in lots of products, and there's a few of them on the screen there, and that's growing all the time. So that when you have pupils or students going to use other products, all of a sudden they'll see the Immersive Reader icon because they'll get used to it from Office 365, but it helps to inform them that they've got something else that can support them in accessing the learning they've been given. And one of the big requests that we've had so far from this session is, well, could you pick one thing that would have massive impact across all areas of the school, regardless of curriculum, regardless of role? And I truly believe that Immersive Reader is one of those. So let's break out from the presentation and just move over and have a quick look at that in context in Teams. Just going to swap screens for you. So you will see a screen I'm logged into and a demo version of Office 365. It's a landing page we've revisited a few times. I've simply gone to Teams, and I've got some Teams open here. And I've gone into one of my class teams that I might have for delivering teaching and learning, whether that's hybrid, remote, face-to-face. Teams lends itself quite well to all of those different scenarios. But we mentioned that Immersive Reader is in various different places. Now, it could be that you're just trying to read the posts and you need to understand what's going on. So I might get in here as a pupil, and I could be in Key Stage 1, I could be in Key Stage 2, and I just don't have an age-appropriate access to reading skills. But that shouldn't stop me understanding, well, what on earth do these words say here in the middle? So you can click the ellipses at the top. When you click them, you can go down, and when you go down, you can select the Immersive Reader from there. And then what it will do is it will take that post and it will turn it into an accessible version. It gets rid of all the busyness that's going on from posts, and then it brings it into a single one. So you can have it read to you if you press the read
Martin
button.
Long at Thursday, the 3rd of December 2029, 51. Important. Today's lesson.
And as well as it being read out loud, you can adjust your experience to suit your own learning needs. And you only need to show pupils this once or twice, and they soon pick up the hang of it. Also, you can empower parents to support pupils. And also, if you've got parents maybe who don't have English as a first language, you could help them access the resources that their children are using to support the school and support their child in being successful in things like homework. So you may be visually impaired and you need larger text. Well, that's not a problem. You can drag a button up and you can slide it to suit whatever your comfort level is. You could increase or decrease spacing between words. So if you need them spaced out, the words and the letters, fine, leave that on. If not, switch it off. You can pick different fonts depending on what you prefer. There's 3 there at the moment, but always there's requests in to increase the number of those. You could also have different coloured backgrounds to suit your visual impairment, possibly. So if you needed a green background, it's not a problem. If you felt that pink was for you. A lot of people request the pale beige or the yellow background because that supports a lot of visual impairments. You could also have the text formatted, so it's in the original version, or you can turn formatting off and it will go to an unformatted version. So you've got text preferences there, but you've also got grammar preferences in the middle. And in the grammar preferences, you can label up text in the paragraph. So you can see here, I've got nouns, verbs, and adjectives. And over here, labeled in the main text, I've got the same thing. But also, we've got a picture dictionary in here. So when I click a word, I get the pictorial version of that word, as well as being able to get the single word read to me.
Important.
And that's all included absolutely free, and Immersive Reader goes absolutely anywhere, but you can switch that on and off as you want. So if I didn't want to have adjectives there, I can get rid of adjectives and they don't show up. If I want to flick them on, I can, and I can also have them labeled. So they were labeled, now they were unlabeled, now they're labeled again because I've got nouns, and I don't think I've got any verbs in here. I haven't. I might switch my adjectives on, but I get some adjectives in there too. On the final page, if you've got a learning need such as dyslexia, you can bring in things like narrow line focus, and what that will do is cut down the amount of text available to you on the page. You can see it ghosted, but it focuses your attention in on the line that's being read.
Today's lessons. English SPAC.
And the line will shift with what's being read on screen. If the reading is too fast, you've got various options to either speed it up or slow it down. You can also choose whether you want a male or a female voice to suit whichever you prefer. This is where you switch the picture dictionary on, but you can also change the language that you've got available, so that if you've got pupils that are EAL, or you've got parents that don't have English as their primary language, the teacher has less of a workload, because instead of worrying about trying to prepare resources and then differentiate or adapt for all the different pupils they've got in their class, they could maybe post once in Teams, and then the person at the end of the message, the post, whether it's a pupil, whether it's another member of staff, or whether it's a parent at home, can go into here and they can use things like Immersive Reader. If they need the whole of the post translated, they just turn on the translates, choose the language that they're using as their additional language, and then it wouldn't appear in English, it would appear in French or German or Polish or whichever language you like. So there's lots of different accessibility tools in there. So Immersive Reader, I said, it is in many different places. It's in OneNote class notebook if we're using that for day-to-day teaching, but a lot of people use assignments. So if I was in my assignment and I was looking at, let's say, the geography homework, I could click on the dots, and I can have a look at this in student view. And then when I've got the view of that assignment there in student view, up here in the corner, there's Immersive Reader again. And if this, at the moment, it's got rid of a lot of the clutter from the teacher view, but if I want to turn on Immersive Reader, I press the button, and then in it comes, and it will read out what my homework is, though it's very, very minimal instructions there about just completing the test, and the test is pinned underneath. But if that test then opens up in Word, well, I've got Immersive Reader in Word. So if I still can't read a text when I get into the Word and I need to type into it, I can have that in there. You can enable other accessibility tools such as dictation. So if the physical keyboard is the barrier to being successful in learning, well, you don't have to type your answers in. You could just dictate to Word, and as long as you've got the online web app version of Office 365 Word, or you've got the downloaded installed version of Office 2019 or desktop Office 365, you can just dictate to it and it will record it, and it will save back to the cloud if you're working out of OneDrive, or if you're working in the files section in here, it will just save back into the files section. So I would say if there is one universal tool to include in your vision planning that has maximum impact across the whole school, it is accessibility tools, things like Immersive Reader we've just looked at, also the translation tool, dictation features. You might need to plan that in on your journey. So if you know at the moment you've still got some old hardware, old desktop computers, old laptops, or maybe they need an upgrade so that they're running the newer versions of Windows 10 or Office, well, plan that in. That may be not a year 1 or 2 thing for you that you can achieve, but you know that once you do achieve it, it's going to have significant impact, because the engagement for pupils will suddenly be, maybe you haven't got a core of them sat in the classroom unable to access what's being taught. The engagement from the teacher is suddenly driven far, far higher than it ever was before, because suddenly the pupils can be independent in accessing the learning resources that were available to them, except now they can understand what they're being asked to do better than they were previously. So never underestimate the power of the learning tools and understanding what the learning tools can do for you. So for me, it's really to say a massive thank you for coming on this journey with us at Turn It On. Don't forget what you've done with the ETF so far. And if you think you would like any deeper support, make sure that you contact us. Also, you can from Microsoft. Ways to contact us are there on the screen for support in Microsoft. And if you want to get hold of Turn It On, you're best to email into office@turniton.co.uk. You can always ask for support and future support on your journey to realize your vision. But for me now, it's any final questions before we sign off for today's session, and I bid you all good luck for the future. Okay. Well, I just want to say thank you for coming along over these sessions. I know it's not been easy for everyone to attend, and some of the people will be listening to this as a pre-recorded session. I fully appreciate how busy it is in schools currently and the immense pressure you are under just trying to keep schools open. And once we hopefully move past the unfortunate circumstances we find ourselves in, we will then be able to refocus some of our time and energy into that vision planning and the educational transformation of our schools. But don't forget, use the ETF resources there. Go to the Microsoft Education Centre, do some self-study, get yourself prepared. And even if at the beginning all you're doing is jotting down some ideas onto a piece of paper, it's where most people start, let me reassure you. And then affirm that with others in school, and then start to capture that in the planning documents I've shared with you from previous sessions. So thank you very much for coming along. I really appreciate your time, and I may see some of you again in the future.